Hello friends, 40 here from Lucidmix.com with my second video in the series entitled 6-Minute Mix Tricks. Following on from last week where I discussed LCR panning and counterpointed instruments as a way to give you more space and width in your mixes, today I'd like to continue with the space and width theme by showing you more ways of creating space and width for your mixes. So back to today's tips. I'd like to start with EQ. In particular, how subtractive EQ creates space in your mix so that every instrument has a place, even in the busiest of mixes. In this example, there is a horn section, a solo cornet, heavy backing vocal stylings, vocals, guitars, keyboards, percussion, drums and bass in your face, barely room to breathe. I'll play the track, then show you the type of EQ moves that I make on most tracks for most instruments. So I'll play you the track and then I'll make a couple of comments. Right, clearly a section, and as I said, there is a lot going on. One thing that's clear to me, although it isn't the first time I've listened to it, is that the horn section is getting masked by the backing vocals. So I'm not talking about the solo cornet, I'm talking about the horn section. They also sound a little boxy to me and pretty flat. So I want to clean them up and by taking out the unwanted frequencies and then make them rasp by adding some top-end fizz. To do that, this is the SSL E-Series channel strip from Universal Audio. And I'm using this because it essentially is an emulation of a console channel strip. So it has EQ, compression, gates, and high and low pass filters. Pretty much everything I need for a mix. Now, that doesn't mean, if you haven't got one of these, that you can't get the same results with the native plugins that come with your DAW. In fact, once I've given you this example, I'll show you how to recreate the same results using Logic's compressor and channel EQ. So, firstly, I always add a high-pass filter to just about every track that isn't considered your low end, i.e., leave alone your kick and your bass guitar and probably a bass synth or things that are supposed to be making up the frequencies down that end. And what this will do is clean up your low end, creating space for your kick and your bass, which they're pretty integral to and what drive modern music. So I do this in solo, and the reason I do that is because I want to hear the point that the sound changes and then dial it back a little so I get the full sound, but without the unwanted low-end rumble. Now, the low-end rumble might not be that evident to you, depending on what you're listening on. If you're listening on a subsystem, you're going to get it. If you're not, there's a point when you could probably turn this up if you're listening on a decent set of headphones, and you'll literally hear a rumble or a type sound going on. So, first of all, then, I will put the horns in solo and apply the high-pass filter in the way that I've said. I want to take too much off and then dial it back to where I don't notice any change. Okay, that's about it for me. Now, as I say, whether it's in or out, and I'll prove it. There isn't any difference unless you're listening on something, like I said, with a sub setup. Apart from, I know that all the frequencies between or below around 80 hertz are getting cut off, and I don't really want them because they're not part of this horn section, or they shouldn't be. So the second thing that I look at, as I said, was looking to remove the boxy frequencies that I can hear. Now, boxy frequencies build up over tracks, and they just add to making your mix sound muddy. So again, this is a type of subtractive EQ, and I might apply this across all instruments, but particularly those that occupy the 350 to 450 kilohertz range. So I'll go in search of the troublesome frequency by boosting it, and then I'll make a cut. Again, in solo, I want to find the sound that is making this boxy. Right, I'll just tell you what I've done there. I've cut it around 400. What I've done is that I've put a slight bell on the EQ curve, but not too drastic. And I've cut it almost by 6 dB. It's probably about 5 dB, which is more than I would usually cut. I'd normally cut around 3 or 4, maybe 3, and then and leave it there. But I'm getting quite a lot of boxiness coming through on this particular part. Finally, once I've removed and reduced the level of the EQ that I don't want, I listen to see if there's any boosting that I need to add the fairy dust. And as I said, I want to get some rasp out of those horns. Now, the SSL EQ is very musical and smooth, particularly at the top end. And I know that horns respond very well to a high shelf boost. So I'll probably be adding more dB of high shelf than you probably expect. So I'm going to do this while the mix is running. Okay, yeah, certainly a lot brighter. Although it's not just about that. I've actually cut a fair chunk out before I added anything. Now, that is a significant boost, probably about 8 dB, but it's a high-pass shelf from 8K. So, we're only talking about air there, really, and it's adding that rasp, which is really what I'm looking for. Finally, I consider whether the instruments need compression to help them sit in the mix. Now, the first thing I did when I put the mix in was I thought I've lost the horns in parts. So ideally, you want to retain the dynamics, but bring any peaks under control. So don't overdo it. These are subtle additions, but applied across the mix on various instruments, they can make all the difference. So whilst the rest of the track is in, I'm going to add and mess with the compression settings. I've got an idea of what I want. tell you what I've done there. I wanted a pretty quick release because I already knew that I wanted to bring the stab element of the horns under control, whilst letting the swell of the horns envelope more naturally. So a ratio of 3:1, which isn't significant, and then I dialed the threshold in until my meter started to show around 3 dB of gain reduction. So again, very subtle moves, but what it does is it lifts the horn through the track. As we'll play you, even though I've given you an example already, I'll do the in and out. So in first.